Attention Guilford County! Are you ready for positive change in our schools? Introducing Bill Goebel, a true champion for our students, parents, and teachers. With years of experience and unwavering dedication, Bill Goebel is the leader we need on the school board. As a former board member at District 3, Bill is already making a difference, shaping policies that benefit our community. Vote for Bill Goebel for school board, and let's build a brighter future for Guilford County together. Paid for by the Citizens for Common Ground.
Coming up in this episode of Finding Common Ground.
Trump beat Biden and knocked him out. Fine. But now you have Harris. So what are you going to do? And the energy around her appointment is giving people fits.
The number one party in North Carolina is unaffiliated, and it's been growing.
Right.
Well, why has it been growing? They're not happy with either party.
We're comfortable with black athletes who could run fast and jump high like P.F. Flyers. But when you say we want to be the president of the United States, it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
The average person has a lot of common sense, and they can see through a lot of these crazy ads.
There are two sides to every coin.
How do we deal with racial issues when they affect relationships?
Finding common ground on all those issues that we come against.
There's black and there's white.
And I think as Christians, we have to learn how to get together because we're not in heaven.
I've met more interesting people just by God just bringing them in.
Republicans and Democrats.
But a lot of times, when it comes to race and it comes to culture and it comes to perception, even as Christians, we don't always understand. We look at it through our lenses.
There's Bill.
I grew up in a suburb of Cleveland called Parma.
Any black people in Palmer?
There was not one.
Not one black person,
Not
Bill?
one.
Come
Not
on, Bill,
one.
you got to have one, a
Nope.
token black person, a token.
And there's Odell.
I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, public housing, single mom, divorced single mom of 4 kids, and I came up through segregation and all that kind of stuff.
If a black person drove through the town, the police would stop and escort him out.
Bill and Odell are finding common ground.
A part of what we have to do is listen to each other, find the common ground, and question, not questioning you like you're on a witness stand, but questioning you for better understanding.
Father God, we just come to you saying we thank you, we praise you, we love you. God, just thank you for all your many blessings. Thank you for my friend Bill as they hit the road and have time to just relax and reflect. And just pray for their safety as they're going all over the country and seeing things and discovering things. Some they've seen before, some they haven't seen before, but just seeing it with fresh set of eyes and lenses, God. So God, we thank you for friendship. In Jesus' precious name we pray and believe. Amen.
Amen. Amen. But dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for safety as we travel these 4,000 or 5,000 miles, pull in a big trailer, as we go down this interstate with big trucks going by and road construction. Keep us safe as we travel about that. Lord, we lift up the folks that are in path of Hurricane Debbie. Let them be safe. Let the flooding not be too bad. And thank you for my friendship with my buddy Odell. Amen.
So Bill, I heard that you went and you saw when politics were politics. We think in 2024 as rough as name calling as all that, but you said you've seen the light. You've seen some stuff that not that you didn't know, but you might have forgotten. What did you see, my friend, that opened your eyes up?
Well, we're in Springfield, Illinois, and we went to the Lincoln Museum. We actually went to Lincoln's house, but we went to the museum and they have a bunch of exhibits, some really good stuff. I'd encourage anybody that can get there to see it. But it talks about when he freed the slaves. And they had posters, of illustrations that were in the paper back then when he did it. Everything from showing him as the devil, as a vampire sucking the blood out of the United States, as a gorilla, as a monkey. I'm just saying horrible.
Whoa, a monkey and a gorilla, that's usually what the Southern newspapers reserve for Black people. They try to portray us as subhuman, monkeys, gorillas. So, boy, they were real mad at him to put him in that category.
Yeah, they're putting him in some pretty tough categories. And then, we had a chance to go to his house and learn a little bit about his history. I knew some of the stuff, but, the little bit you learn in the books in history, American history, growing up. But, the reason he got back into politics was this particular bill that went through. I think it's called the Nebraska-Kansas bill.
Yeah.
And that, you know about that one? Kansas,
Yeah, I
Nebraska?
thought that was the one talking about free slaves and what land will be free and what wouldn't be, where you could utilize free slaves and all that kind of stuff. Am I mistaken or what?
Yeah, as I went on, started doing more research on it because I didn't know much about it. I might have heard about it, but I certainly forgot it. But it was related to the new territory that was opening up, but it was really tied into expanding that territory with railroads. And Stephen Douglas, who was a senator at the time, Democratic senator, and Lincoln was a Republican, but Douglas wanted to open up that territory, and he needed support for that. And it was Nebraska effectively repealed the Missouri Compromise of 1820, which basically said there were no slavery in the new territories,
Right.
only in the South. And that was set up in 1803. Jefferson was the one that got all that territory. But I bought a book on Lincoln's speeches, and he was debating Douglas, who was in favor of slavery. And the reason for it was all tied together with the railroads, Transcontinental Railroad, and big money, I guess. And in order to open up this territory, Douglas had to make a agreement to get the votes. And the Southern Bloc voted as a bloc, and they basically said, we won't support you in any of the initiatives. In fact, the first one didn't pass unless you take and allow us to have slavery in there. So what he did as a compromise, he said, no, I won't allow you to have slavery, but I will allow the states to make their own decision in territories.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, let them decide, and that's what he went in. Well, when Lincoln saw that, read that they were trying to do it, that's when he decided he was going to debate Douglas and go head to head with him. And one of his speeches he gave, let's see, I bought this Lincoln speeches, but this was a speech at Lewiston, Illinois, in 1858 with Stephen Douglas, and he basically talks about how the founding fathers, in order to compromise, the all men are created equal. Lincoln believed that, and basically the act said that Lincoln believed that the founding fathers wanted to rid slavery. You can't be half slave and half not slave in a country divided. So he felt that by there was another act made by Congress that stopped the slave trade. So they thought they would stop the supply of slaves coming over, and eventually it would die out. Well, the thing they forgot was that these slaveholders were breeding slaves and perpetuating it. And so they were doing those kind of things. And it was incredible. Then it led me into another act, which is the Dred Scott Act, a ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court stated enslaved people were not citizens of the United States and therefore could not expect to be any protection from the federal government in the courts. The opinion also stated that Congress had no authority to ban slavery from federal territory. That was in 1846. In fact, it said that the American Constitution was set up for the benefit of white people only. And
That's rough, ain't it?
Oh man, the Dred Scott and Sanford ruling was considered the worst ruling for the Supreme Court ever. And it goes through how legally it wasn't ethical. So you think about Supreme Court getting involved in politics today. They've been involved in politics a long time.
Bill, you're absolutely right. And that's an amazing trip. One of the things that as a historian, especially with not civil rights, but the Civil War, is a lot of to your point, when they stopped the transportation or import of enslaved folks from Africa, what people didn't know, and you know it, because again, Going with the Wind and all this kind of stuff always portrays slavery as a forced labor picking cotton in the agrarian South. But what people may or may not understand is that they had slave plantations that picked indigo, picked cotton, picked rice, all this, but also up in Virginia. Virginia was the main place. They had about 3 or 4 very well-known plantations that were breeding plantations. So you were breeding and shipping them down to New Orleans. New Orleans was one of the main points where you would ship the slaves down and sell them. So yes, people always had workarounds, and slavery was so profitable in so many different ways for that it was hard to give it up. It took a war to give it up, and Lincoln lost his life for that, in my opinion. But to your point, as far as the Supreme Court justices are concerned, or even politics today, when people say that if the Republican Party does not win the 2024 presidential election, there's going to be a civil war, I think that we have to be careful with our words because, again, as I stated in previous shows, that's nothing to play with. Democracy is fragile. And when you start thinking about today, we see all the commercials, and we talk about the political commercials, the political ads that we're starting to get bombarded with in the battleground state. In those days, the political ad or the role that the media played in some of the Southern media, Lincoln was portrayed as monkeys, as I think you said what? One of them, he had a mask on. And what happened when he took the mask off?
Yeah, he was standing with the half-built Washington Monument in the background. And when he took off his mask, his face was in one hand and the devil was now on his body as the face.
Wow.
So he was masquerading as the devil. You know, it was one of the things that I found, a question that was asked, what would have happened with Reconstruction if Lincoln had not got assassinated? And they said that there weren't a lot of papers written, but there was a speech that he gave at the White House right after the Civil War ended. And people came to the White House. They come right up on the White House lawn, and he was on the second story speaking from a window. And his only speech he gave was a speech he gave just before he got assassinated. And it gave a little hint into what he wanted to do. And supposedly John Wilkes Booth was in that audience and heard it, which further inflamed his desire to assassinate. But what he said in that speech is he believed that the slaves needed public education, be able to go to school, learn how to read and write, should have the full rights of every American citizen, including voting. So you could imagine if you were for slavery and passionate about it, like these guys were, almost fanatical, how that just set the powder keg even more. So there are a lot of little things like that you think about the pressure the guy had, losing 600,000 Union and about 500,000 or 700,000 Confederates, 1.4 million. That's a lot. We only had about 30 or 40 million people in the entire population, and the resources that were used. And I mean, it's just crazy. So you look at what's going on today, people calling each other names. I see more of the Republicans calling names. Like I had a guy who just posted on Facebook that actually called me out on a bunch of stuff. And he finally came and visited me in Dory and apologized for what he said about me. But he put a comment on there, and this is kind of crude, but his comment was, switching from Biden to Harris is like pooping in your pants and changing your shirt. Now, what the heck is kind of a comment that is, what is that so ugly? And this guy is supposed to be a Christian and post all kinds of Christian stuff. And I'm like, is that what Jesus would say?
Well, Jesus said something that got him crucified. So whatever Jesus said and did, as we all know, got him crucified. But when we say one's supposed to be a Christian, I'm sure this gentleman is a Christian. I think that sometimes we can be zealous. I think when you start talking about the Biden-Harris situation, it's interesting, as we stated before, as I stated before, be careful what you wish for. Because again, as everybody understands, Odell's stance was no Biden, no Trump for 2024. That was my deal. Okay, everybody didn't take me up on that, but we had Biden and Trump. Well, now we don't have Biden anymore. We have Trump. Trump beat Biden and knocked him out. Fine. But now you have Harris. So what are you going to do? And the energy around her appointment is giving people fits. I'm tickled pink.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that's what's got these Republicans scared. We've got now Republicans that are switching over and going to vote Democrat over it. And I made me start thinking, because I heard a bunch of negative comments on Facebook on that, that if they should take them out and chastise.
Oh,
and I'm thinking,
Bill, so is that deep now? Take them out and beat them and just do why? Because they're exercising their right to vote.
unbelievable. Yeah. And, I started thinking about it. And, the number one party in North Carolina is unaffiliated, and it's been growing.
Right.
Well, why has it been growing? Because they're not happy with either party. And that's why it's grown. People are going, we're not happy with either of these situations. And so I think, as these parties continue to let the fringes control them, they are going to find out that the silent majority, which is the unaffiliated that Reagan talked about, the silent majority is going to step up and do the right thing. When I got the 3,500 signatures, I talked to a lot of people. And one of the things that came across loud and clear is the average person has a lot of common sense, and they can see through a lot of these crazy ads that are coming out.
Well, let me jump in right there if you don't mind. So right now, here we go. The new vice president candidate potential was picked, Tim Walz. I think I pronounced his name the right way. And the right-wing media is just jumping all over this guy, man, just beating him down, everything in the world. I thought she would pick Josh Shapiro, from Pennsylvania, but it looked like the vouchers and his stance on Israel may have certain parts of the party, as you stated, parts that's helping to control or be the rudder for these parties. Said Josh may have had some baggage, but I listened to Tim Walz, like everyone else, and Bill, he's folksy. The boy's good. Have you had opportunity to hear him or see his speeches? What's your thought?
I have not had that opportunity. I'm looking forward to it. But all the commentators that I'm listening to, including Fox, both sides, are saying the same thing you just said. He's very likable. He's very folksy. He articulates his positions well, and he's a good counterbalance to Harris. And they're beating him up over Floyd. They're beating him up over, just about everything. So I guess you
have to.
You got to accept that that's what they're going to do. And you're probably in good company. Look what they did to Lincoln, right?
Look what they did to Goebel.
Yeah, well, that was a fun period, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
I was with 6,000 scouts and scouters in Colorado volunteering, and I was working as a laborer in the trading post, basically picking orders. And I had an orange vest on. I looked like I was a traffic cop.
Okay.
But I had a great time. And what really was refreshing, there were Democrats there, there were Republicans there were unaffiliated, there were all these different religions. And we were all focused on the main thing, and that was the kids. And, it's so refreshing when you get people working together as opposed to calling each other names. I mean, we tease each other because we're the old guys and been around for a while, but the young kids show us respect, and we show the young kids respect. They do things differently than what we did. I remember the first time I went to Boy Scout camp after years. I hadn't been to one, and I had an image that I had growing up. And the first thing I come by are 4 kids with hair down to their back, and I'm like, what in the world? And their clothes are typical clothes for young people. And it suddenly occurred to me that, holy cow, they've moved and I haven't. I better get with it.
I was sitting there thinking, I remember that same thing happened to me once. I was a college professor, adjunct professor, and I was teaching. And I was just teaching, thought I was doing a good job. And this young lady was on her phone, just on her phone. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to go over there and say in a nice public way, excuse me, am I boring you? You're not paying attention. And common sense said, well, wait a minute, don't do that. And I walked over there to look, and Bill, she was taking notes on her phone the whole time. And I'm the guy, the old guy, getting ready to embarrass myself by trying to be cute and say, am I embarrassed? I mean, am I boring you? You on your phone the whole time? She was taking notes on her phone.
Yeah.
So back to your point about the long hair and all this kind of stuff. Hey, it's all what it is. Let me switch channels a little bit here.
Okay.
I think, and what some of we're starting to hear is that the campaign, the Republican candidate is going to, in his own way, try to make this about Vice President Harris's race. And I thought about what you said about Lincoln. It's like race in America never goes away. It subsides, but it never goes away. What do you think about the race boiling down to? Because people say, well, we want to hear her views. We want to hear her this and that. Okay, you can hear that. But, one of the things that Tim Walz talked about, he says, and again, I still like President Trump, former President Trump's famous line, in my opinion, when he was debating Biden. He said, I don't know what he said. He don't even know what he said. I just love that. That was so funny to me. And I heard something today with Walt said, when you start thinking about crime going down in, I think he said Minnesota or something like that. And he says, crime didn't go down under Trump. And we talk about crimes, even the crimes that Trump committed. And when he said that, Bill, I said, this guy has one of these sharp, folksy type personalities that could connect with people. And I don't blame the Republican Party for getting nervous because, like I told our good friend, Congressman Mark Walker, talked to him the other day, and we were talking about something. I was sharing some thoughts with him, and he was sharing some thoughts with me. And I said, Mark, we both played sports. Nothing worse than when you think you have the game won and it slips away from you. Because the Republican Party had the race won when former President Trump beat Biden in the debates like he stole something. And then when he got up off the platform after the assassination attempt with his hand up like this, what I call giving the Black Power sign. Someone have to let former President Trump know this is the Black Power sign. When he got up with his fist like that, giving the Black Power sign, that race was finished. It was won, victory. All they had to do was run the clock out. Well, guess what? Now Biden gets out, Harris is in. Now all of a sudden, what you thought you had, because you were measuring the drapes, now you're like, wait a minute, what are we going to do? So they spend a lot of time, energy, effort, and money trying to form a narrative for her on how this thing's going to work. And Bill is not working. It's like she's this, she's that. And the good thing about it, she's not taking the bait. She's not, I see the ads and the commercials and all this coming out. And she's just out there, and the crowds are like the Obama type crowds. It's amazing from a Democratic perspective. So back to no Biden, no Trump for 2024, but I'm 100% behind Vice President Harris and her winning, and I do believe she's going to win.
I'm glad you brought that up because I'm old enough to remember John Kennedy running, and they came after him because he was Catholic. And the saying was, if he becomes president, the Pope's going to run the United States. And he had a tough time with that in the South, primarily in the South, that they just, they didn't like Roman Catholics. And so he struggled with that. That was a big issue for him. And, I was listening to one of the presidential candidates, VJ, whatever his name is, the guy, Indian or Pakistani. He wrote an op-ed and they posted it on Facebook. And he basically said, we got schnookered. The Democrats have planned this all along. They let us spend millions and millions of dollars and waste all this resources on a candidate they had no intention of putting in. And they would just let him run out the table until it was so apparent that they had to switch. And they pulled the switch on us. Now we've got to start from zero. And we can't use race as the winning ticket. That will backfire.
Should race be used? I mean,
is that an issue? What's
exactly, is race an issue? Is her gender an issue? What's wrong? She's Black, she's a woman. What's wrong with that?
I don't know. And if she takes the high road, and again, going back to Kennedy, he always was pointing toward the future. And the future
Yeah.
was in his one of his great speeches was that he talked about going to the moon. He
Wow.
said, and we want to go to the moon and send a man to the moon and back safely in this decade, by the end of this decade. And at that time, we had no resources. We didn't even have the metals. We didn't have the capability to put somebody out in outer space. Nobody did in the world, not even the Russians at that time. But he set a goal, a future for us that everybody got around. It was funded by the government. And I'm sure people could have said, what benefit are we going to go to have a man walk on the moon? What benefit is there going to be in spending billions and billions of dollars? Well, turns out there was tremendous benefits in technology growth.
Right.
Learning about how to build metals that withstand it. It helped build better jets, better aircraft, computers. I mean, just on and on. You start thinking of the ripple effect that had. And so what I find is, particularly when I was council president of the Scouts, how do you motivate 10,000 people? That's what I had in my council, between Scouts and Scouters. And you have to set a future. What is the future that you want and the vision that you have? And don't get bogged down in issues necessarily. Talk about the future, what we want to have America be. There's always going to be issues. Every country has an economic issue. Russia,
Right.
China, all of them are struggling. China's trying to feed 1 billion people and keep them busy. Because if these people get rambunctious, they're going to lose the party. In Russia, that's just crazy what they control. And I had a friend that was over there, and he was watching TV, and they were doing he didn't speak Russian, but his friend did, and he said they were watching the news, and they were talking about America, and while they were talking about America, a Nazi flag came down for propaganda, saying America is controlled by the Jews and the Nazis, and blah 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 blah. And you think about, okay, are people probably buying it? And people buy that we haven't gone to the moon, that it was done in a studio in California. So people will buy stuff.
Wow. Are you serious?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's all these conspiracy theories, man. These people, they start thinking about stuff and you hear about it and you go, holy cow. People go, oh, if Harris gets in, the country's gone to pot. I had one guy, I copied it.
Why? Why, if Harris got in, it would go to pot?
Well, here's what he said. He said they're putting out drop boxes again. Voter rolls are a mess. Some states will have over double-digit days for early voting. In short, it's 2020 again. The Dems do what they want and never held responsible for breaking laws. Here's what the Democrats want. They want a communist regime. They want your guns. They want your gas-powered automobiles. They want your money. They want your children's minds and bodies. They want your land. They are globalists. Private ownership, cease and desist. They want to control electricity through green new scam. They want blackouts where they have certain hours a day with or without power. They want you to stop eating beef and eating something grown in a lab. They want a lower population to control. Their goal is globalist. On and on. And I'm like, what the heck? That's a pastor saying that. You remember the guys that the pastors with a punch that wanted me on? And I didn't go on their podcast.
Yes.
That's one of the pastors. This guy ran for lieutenant governor in North Carolina.
I can't take, nor can you or anyone else take his Christianity away from him. That's the way he chooses to express it. But when you think about school vouchers, different people have different opinions on those. When you think about the stance on Israel, different people have different opinions on that. You think about abortion, you think about immigration, you think about the economy, you think about inflation. All those are legitimate issues. What's not legitimate, Bill, is the fact that when these ads hit, you can't cry. And what I mean by that is this. Way back in the days when Kathy Manning first ran, Congresswoman Kathy Manning first ran against Ted Budd, some ads came out talking about how she mismanaged some funds or something on the board, which wasn't true. And I happened to be sitting on the board at the time, so I knew exactly what they were talking about. And everybody got so upset, and they asked board members to sign petitions to show that this is cease and desist. That's the term they use. Well, of course, nobody cease and desist, and they questioned then candidate Ted Budd about stop these ads. And Budd said, I don't run the ads.
Third party that runs them.
Now we have the same thing going on with Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. Robinson, some ads came out. Of course, the opposition research, just like the one with Congressman Mark Walker, talked about him saying how abortion, this is not your body. You need to keep your skirt up and everything else. Well, that keep hitting him so hard. Now he came out with a counter ad with him and his wife talking about that they had an abortion. Man, Republicans hit the roof. They're like, he should have never admitted to that. He should have never said that. He should have never done that. Then a new ad's coming out, and you don't see these because you traveling all around the country, which is good. This thing about Mark Robinson's child care center, talking about his wife's child care center. And Bill, this is a terrible ad. It makes them look so bad from my perspective. And it's just now he put out a cease and desist, trying to pull that ad off. But, you know, just like the one with Ted Budd and Kathy Manning, they're still running it. It's still running it. So I tried to loop back to what you said about the Southern newspapers with Lincoln. Newspapers, Supreme Court justices have always, the media has always been involved in politics. What say you, my friend?
Well, I think if they would have had cell phones back in Lincoln's day, you would have gotten a story about his kids. Lincoln had 3 boys, and his philosophy for parenting was kind of interesting. Let me read what they had. It was in one of the plaques. There it is. It wasn't uncommon to see Abraham Lincoln smiling and telling stories in Springfield, walking down the sidewalk with one of his sons on his shoulders or in his coattails, talking to him. He said, years later, Mary described her husband saying, "It is my pleasure that my children are free, happy, and unrestrained by parental tyranny. Love is the chain whereby to bind a child to its parents." Well, they showed his, every place we went, they said, well, the kids were very mischievy. And they talked about how they had a little room on the second floor. They would throw a fishing line out and grab people's hats as they walked by, or
Wow.
holler things at them, and try and scare them. But then you went into Lincoln's office and there was ink on the walls, and Lincoln was sitting in a chair reading.
Yeah.
And one son was standing on the table with an inkwell, throwing it at another son who had a broom out, who was hitting it like a baseball. And the place was in shatters. And they said,
Wow.
they didn't discipline their kids. So you can imagine the ads that would be run today about Lincoln saying,
Yes.
he can't discipline
Yes.
his family. How can he discipline a country? I mean, just go on and on. So, you know, everybody has skeletons in their closet. Everybody has something that you can magnify and make it look horrible. Okay. This stuff about Robinson, I don't know if it's true or not. I think it probably is, because it would be slander if it wasn't. They're not denying it in the cease and desist letter. They're just saying it's not true. Well, I guess they are denying it, but they don't have any evidence to back it up. And I suspect they got this information from reports of social services that went in and checked the place out.
Well, you're absolutely right. Let me read real quickly what it says. It said the headline says, Robinson sends cease and desist letter to Stein over alleged false ad allegations. And the ad says, attorney for Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson's campaign have sent a cease and desist letter to Attorney General Josh Stein and his campaign for allegedly running a TV ad that includes a series of misleading statements and visual depicting a child care center that the lieutenant governor and his wife, Valanda Hill, ran in Greensboro between 2005 and 2007. This letter puts Josh Stein and his campaign on notice that this advertisement contains false and defamatory, your point, information, says attorney Charles Spies and Benjamin here accounts to Mark Robinson's and friends of Mark Robinson's campaign. Both Josh Stein personally and his campaign will bear liability if the advertisement continues to air. And of course, it does continue to air. So Stein is an attorney, Harvard-trained attorney. I think he knows the laws on this kind of stuff. It's interesting that politics make strange bedfellows. This one just hurt, though. This one hit Robinson like a torpedo in the flank, but also the one talking about abortion and this is not your body and stuff like that, that beat him up too, to the point, because I've been involved in campaigns, you have too, and someone has to go in there and tell the candidate the bad news. So someone had to go in there and say, hey, Lieutenant Governor, we may need to produce a ad to counter this one that they just keep playing and just turning everybody off. And he had to go, or somebody had to go and convince his wife or somebody to say, hey, we're going to have to go up there and put all our personal business out there. Bill, that's a tough pill to swallow. That's a tough pill. And I like Lieutenant Governor Robinson, met him a couple times, but that's a tough pill to swallow, because if I had to go to my wife and say, hey, we have to do this, that wouldn't have been a good day in Hootersville in the Cleveland's household.
I agree. I know Bev. I totally agree. And you know,
There
Dory,
you go.
that would not fly well with her either. It's a shame politics has to get this way, but it looks like it's been that way for a long time. You know, another thing that Dory and I are doing, we watched the documentary on John Adams that was, a lot of it was based on David McCullough's book, John Adams. In fact, he was on the set for most of it. When he starts out, he talks about how this is the most realistic and accurate thing to his book. But one of the things that came up that I was listening to McCullough talk about was, out of all the founding fathers, John Adams was the only one that didn't own slaves. And out of the first few presidents, only John Adams and his son, John Quincy Adams, never owned slaves. Everybody else did. Now, they hired people to help them work and stuff, but they weren't slaves. They weren't ownership type thing. They hired them to help do things. And when Adams went to the White House for the first time, it was still under construction, and slaves were building it. It was repulsive to the Adams.
People don't understand, but you do, that a lot of the labor and the skilled craft, a lot of time, as you know, you start talking about antebellum South and, Abbeville and slavery, and Abbeville, what people know is little town in South Carolina that prides itself still to this day of being the birthplace and the deathbed of the Confederacy. So, but that's where my family came from to a point. And to your point, think about it, Bill. Think about it. This is how I had to get to the point. Here you are, people, enslaved individuals who were forced to do a lot of the labor, not just manual labor, but skilled labor. So we talk about apprentice programs. You spend a lot of time, energy, and effort, your company going in, training people. And as people retire, how do I get somebody new to come into this profession? That wasn't the issue during the antebellum South. You had people, they were trained, they were not the term mentor, but they were worked to the point that you would learn this skill, because we need somebody to keep this part of the plantation going, because plantations were like miniature corporations. So a lot of the skill set, these skills were being passed down for hundreds of years. I mean, think about it. So the whole idea that someone who's came through training, quote unquote, can get his or her freedom, and go to DC and work on the Capitol, or since that time, Virginia was right there, one of the main plantations on breeding, and slavery was in Virginia. Just say, hey, take some of my skilled servants and let them go do it and pay me. So of course, skilled individuals would be doing these things, and people would, if you're not careful, they're dumbing down those of my ancestors that were enslaved to no intelligence.
Beast of burden.
The history documents quite well that a lot of the skill, knowledge, and know-how and ingenuity came with these individuals from Africa. A lot of the rice plantations and how do you cultivate land and turn barren land into productive land. All that, not saying that everything, because this is where the rub comes in. Many people said it's because of the white man, America is great because of all the ingenuity. And says, I give the enslaved individuals no credit at all. I think it was because the ingenuity of everybody who got involved with it helped, because this enslaved individuals weren't ignorant in spite of what media may say. And every white person was not some genius, in spite of everybody would say. So it's just one of those things that when you really get into the history, and it's hard to look at it from a place of, let me just look at this, because right now, this book I'm working on, Harvesting College, Abbeville, South Carolina, where the good people from Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, after the Civil War came in to start a college for formerly enslaved African Americans. And the white folks in the town burnt it down, Bill. They're like, you're not educated. We're going to kill Lincoln. And by the way, you ain't coming here and educating a bunch of black folk. No, we'll kill you, burn it down first. Because that was the rage that people had. Back to you talk about Lincoln, that's real. And in some parts of the South, that rage is still burning.
And you wonder why that is. What is the reason for those? I don't know if hatred is the right word, but certainly prejudice and feeling that a certain race or color of skin doesn't deserve the rights that everybody has, or they're always taking, as opposed to, we're just, the rich people are writing checks and these people are just sitting around eating bonbons and watching television. And that's not the case. We did a show on Uncle Nearest bourbon, and Uncle Nearest was
a great show. Love that show.
Yeah, slave. He was a slave. His master was a Baptist pastor who had a side gig, and his side gig was he found this guy, Uncle Nearest, who knew how to make great whiskey. And
he was a bootlegger, Bill. His side job was a bootlegger. That's the side gig.
And he was making good money on it. But when the guy who really made them famous was Jack Daniels, who was the salesman, the marketing guy, because he would go out during the Civil War and sell this stuff. And that's how it became famous. And it wasn't called Jack Daniels then. It was, I don't know what it was called. Another bourbon, Elijah Craig, that was a Baptist pastor. That's his name, Elijah Craig. And he had a side gig as well. So, maybe you and I ought to figure out a way to do a side gig on bourbon. We'll call it Uncle Odell.
No, don't attach me to that. But what I will say is this, Bill, it's nice to have these conversations among friends, because a lot of people listen to us now is like, wait a minute, how can they talk about enslaved individuals? Bill says slaves, Odell said, it says enslaved ancestors. Those are fighting words. Some people, those are in charge words. Those are things that some people says, listen, the last thing America ever need, or we thought would happen, was a black president. So when President Barack Obama got elected, it's like, oh my God, this country is really going crazy. Now you're looking at it's a possibility of a black female being elected president of the United States. And it's like, what's wrong with that though, Bill? And back to the question, and I'm not asking you per se, I'm just asking out loud.
Great question.
Yeah, why is it such a horrible thing for an intelligent, educated, hardworking black female to be the president of these United States of America? Or maybe it's something in the Constitution that says the only person who could be a president in the United States of America is a white male.
Yeah. Well, we've had a lot of presidents. We had 40-some presidents, I think 45, 46. And the country's still around. We're still the greatest country in the world. Now, could we do better? You betcha.
At this time, I agree.
Yeah. So, is one person going to come in and destroy the country? Probably not. It's going to take a lot, Matt. And
we already had a 45th president who tried that, Bill. and everything said, I'm not going to be a peaceful transfer of power. And you had President Biden, the peaceful transfer of Biden. But let me ask a question though, Bill, and then I promise I'll be quiet for a second. How can this country root and cheer during the Olympics for Black athletes, whether they're male, female, everything? And I mean, love Black athletes, even to the point of Snoop Dogg. We're cheering on Snoop Dogg, but that's okay in that arena. We're comfortable with Black athletes who could run fast and jump high like PF Flyers. We're comfortable with Black female athletes who jump in gymnastics and everything else. We're not good at diving. We can't beat the Chinese on diving yet because, Black people don't play at water like that. But all that's good. But when you say we want to be the president of the United States, it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Stay in your place now. Wait a minute. You can stay on you're a good athlete and you can sing and dance, but president of the United States? Now we'll cheer for you on the balance beam. We'll cheer for you on the bars. We'll cheer for you doing gymnastics, but president of the United States? Oh, no. So I don't understand. Well, I do understand that people have their perception of where someone will succeed in and where someone won't.
Oh, you're right. And again, we heard a story from David McCullough about his dad. He said he remembered David was a young kid, probably 13 or 14 when Truman was running, and he wanted to stay up to hear the results. And his dad really, really disliked Truman. And David McCullough said, man, I stayed up to about 11:30 and I couldn't keep my eyes open. I fell asleep. So next morning I went into the kitchen and asked my dad, who won? And he said, Truman. This country is going to go to hell. It's going to be destroyed by him. And he said about 35 years later, I was in the same kitchen with my dad and we were talking politics. And he was, I think Johnson was president then, he said, and my dad said, you know what we need? We need another Truman. We need someone like Truman back in. And, people's lenses change over time. And what happens is I find that people, which you're describing, their lens is one way for Black athletes. But when it comes to Blacks having their own business and wanting to, you do an RFP, which is a request for a proposal on a job.
Yes.
If you go through the list, you go through what's Black and what's white, there's very few Black. And why is that? Because have they not been given the chance to build companies? Well, how do you build a company? It's like when I remember first time when I got out of college, I wanted to go to work. Do you have experience? I just got out of college. Of course not. Well, if you don't have experience, you can't get a job here. Well, how am I going to get a job if I don't get experience? You got to give somebody to give you a break. And the Trevor, who's the comedian? But anyhow, he's written a book and he's a great speaker. And he talks about that growing up, he said one of the things that he found is that the people of color, for the most part, were not given an opportunity to develop their wealth through homes, because that's where most people generate their wealth. And
Trevor Noah, right?
Yeah, I think so. He's a comedian.
Yep.
And
South African comedian, writer, producer, political commentator. Yes, that's on the Daily Show.
Yeah, on the Daily Show. Yeah, and he's very intellectual. We heard him speak at Winston-Salem State, and while he was speaking, a Palestinian lady got up and started screaming in the audience, and he took control of that situation. He didn't say get her out of here or anything. He talked to her. He says, ma'am, he says, I understand you have a reason to protest. I understand you have a cause. He said, and I'm happy to discuss it with you, but this isn't the right time and place. He said, we have to be civil and allow people to talk, and I'm here to talk, not to debate Palestine. Well, she kept going. And he finally looked at her and he said, how is what you're doing helping the cause of the Palestinian people? If you want to help the cause of the Palestinian people, go see your congressman, go see your senator, go see people that have power that can make the change. He said, I have no power. I can't make the change. He said, you're just wasting my time. And then they threw it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he was pretty good.
It's interesting you would say that. One of the things that I was told years ago by this gentleman, he said, Odell, you have to understand how he was a white gentleman at the time, and he was elected official. He says, when we go to these city council meetings, school board meetings, or meetings, and we have open comment periods, you all, referring to Black people, you get up there, y'all so emotional, you argue, it's almost like y'all get ready to have a heart attack, and we just sit there and listen to you without saying a word and tune you out. And when it's over, we're going to go ahead and vote the way we're going to vote anyway, because we already decided in the back room how we're going to vote. We know what the vote's going to be. And to your point, you said Trevor's sitting there saying, calm, cool, and collected, because a lot of times the most emotional person, it doesn't always come across as the most intelligent person. And that just made it a lot of insight for me. I'm someone who will support Republicans, Democrats, independents. I'm someone who have my own views, a independent thinker per se, but I am a proud registered Democrat, been a registered Democrat my whole life. But at the same time, I don't vote straight tickets, and I don't advise anyone to vote a straight ticket, because I think that you need to, as a voter, you need to be aware of each issue and do your homework on who you're going to vote for, from school board to county commissioner to dog catcher to everything. I just believe that, and that's the way I teach my boys and our family. That's kind of how we do things. So politics make strange bedfellows, Bill. In a lot of cases, you really don't know who's behind the candidate. And again, this is the time of year for African-American churches that candidates start rolling in and rolling through. We're going to start getting invitations like crazy that, hey, I want to come to your church. We want to do this. We want to do that. So it's just all interesting, Bill.
Yeah, it's that silly season. You know, when I was on the school board, I started going to the town hall meetings in my district. And there's Stokesdale, Summerfield, Oak Ridge, Greensboro. And I was one of I said, how many times does a school board member come up here? And they said, only at election time. And I said, well, I'm going to be there as often as I can. And I was there a lot. And all of a sudden, guess who started showing up? Other politicians. Other politicians, yeah, started showing up. And it got to the point that if I showed up and there was one of these, I had one of the council women, I could see her, she was texting my opponent to tell him, hey, Bill's here, you better get here. And 25 minutes later, he shows up in a suit and tie.
Hey, that's an interesting point. As we move toward a close, I hear that you're getting ready to have a big fundraiser that the good-looking Black guy is going to be speaking at or make a remark.
Yeah, you're going to talk.
Excuse me, I don't want to make it any more than it is. So tell everybody about this fundraiser, and if they want to come and see the good-looking Black guy or hear him make a remark or two.
Yep. August 27th. It's going to be held in Greensboro. If you want the address, just go ahead and email me or text me. You can email me at bill@globalforcommonground.com. That's bill@globalforcommonground.com. And just send me an email. I'll send you an invite. And I think we're going to have a pretty significant number of people. And so we'll raise a little money for the campaign. And then we got to get busy when I get back from this trip. I've got a trip to Cleveland and then a trip to Wilmington for our Youth Resilience Summit that's coming up. That's August 22nd in Port City Church in Wilmington. And once I get done with that, I'm going to start going door to door again and campaigning through November 4th. And the Maverick gave us that billboard. That should be on Battleground now. And I've got one on Market Street from another fella. And we're getting ready to buy a bunch of yard signs and some direct mail, and got a lot of stuff planned.
And Bill, the main thing is that date again is August the what?
27th, and it's going to be at 6:00.
August the 27th at 6:00. Hey, listen, you all come out and support my main man, Bill Goebel fundraiser. No amount is too large, and it is too large. I think the limit is X amount, but no amount is too small. Let me say that. Let's say that.
$10.
And we just want to say thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think Odell's going to announce his new bourbon line, Uncle Odell, at this event.
You know, it's interesting. I went about a couple weeks ago, a weekend ago, they had this reunion, legend high school basketball
I saw
legend
the picture,
reunion, and they
man.
invited me to come. I went,
Yeah.
yeah, and I went, Bill, and it was funny that the things guys still remember and talk about, and it was just funny. You know, it's one thing about getting older in this journey called life. A lot of times you only do it once, and I'm learning a lot about me. And I'm learning a lot about life itself. The older I get, at 64, life is different than it was for that 16, 17, 18-year-old boy that played basketball in high school and junior varsity and middle school. And I like the person I am today. I like that young person. I didn't really know that young person because we were learning and knowing and growing together. But I could look back and I like who I am. And Bill, I believe you like who you are. And I think the thing about our students in the school system is let's continue to nurture and create an environment that they like who they are. Because a lot of times one's self-esteem plays a role when you start talking about ACEs and everything else. And that's why I'm asking people to come out and support you, because I know what you're about. Last word, sir.
Well, it's all about the kids, and education is key to their success. Not only success in maybe a career, but success in being a human being that contributes to society, that is a good husband, a good father, a good mentor to other kids. I mean, education is the key. And we've got to find every child learns differently. And we've got to find those keys to open up that ability for people to become curious and ask, what's behind here? What's the understanding for this? You know, David McCullough said in one of his speeches, he never picked a subject that he knew about because he wanted to learn.
Wow.
He always picked a subject that he had no idea. Like when he did the subject, wrote a book about the building of the Brooklyn Bridge, or the year 1776, or John Adams. So, you know, I think it's stepping out, teaching kids how to become curious about things, ask questions, and because kids by nature are curious. They want to learn. They want to know what's going on, and they have such tremendous energy that you know, you can take them out and they learn things so fast that you and I as old farts can't pick up. I remember in Boy Scouts, they have a thing called a wobble, and that's what your slide goes on for your neckerchief. Well, one of the things we had to do,
Yeah.
one of our classes called wood badge, you had to take rope and intertwine it to make a wobble. Man, I could not get that for the life of me. I struggled with it. And you know who came over and helped me? One of the kids. He goes, Mr. Goble,
Wow.
one of those long-haired kids that I saw, said, Mr. Goble, let me help you with that. And he did it like a Rubik's Cube. He just put this thing together. And and then I said, well, can you show me how to do it? And he took it apart and did it again. And I was like,
Wow.
this is unbelievable. And I still didn't get it.
But Bill, to your point, perception is not reality. Our perception of the long-haired scout, I'm sorry. But the key is he was there or she was there. I think the fact that scouting can change, can be flexible, makes all the difference in the world. Speaking of flexible, as you close it out, tell me, where did you start? Where did you go from your home and this whole circle, and where will you end up before you come back home? Because we miss you. We miss you in Greensboro.
Thank you. We're going to probably do between 5,000 and 6,000 miles. And so we started out in Greensboro, went to Kentucky for a couple of days. Of course, had to stop at Buffalo Trace. And then we went to Kansas, and then we went to Kansas City and St. Louis. And then from there, we went to Golden, Colorado. I worked in Boulder for a better part of a week. We spent 8 days in Golden. Dory jumped out of an airplane in Colorado for her 60th birthday. We went to a restaurant like we did in Paris with we sat in the kitchen and we had 7 or 8 courses. I mean, it was great.
Wow.
We're thinking about you and Bev. And then we left there and we went up to Rapid City, South Dakota, and found out that Sturgis Bike Week is there. There are about 500,000 bikers. I've never seen so many bikes in my life.
And you come in there with a
Camper.
A camper, and these oh man.
And but they were nice people. You know, again, you look at them and you go, wow, these people are all tatted up and got piercings places, and just looked hardcore. They were so neat. I went out and had a cigar and a bourbon, and they were just nice as heck. So we stayed there a couple nights. Went to Mount Rushmore and saw the lighting at night with a movie about nation, and stood with probably 300 or 400 people. Thing that struck me is a lot of them were immigrants. They were from a lot of them from the Middle East and from South America, and we sang "God Bless America" and we sang the national anthem. We all stood up and did that, which was really cool at night. And then we left there and we drove to, right now we're in Springfield, Illinois, and we're going tomorrow to just south of Columbus. Tomorrow's going to be a long day, going to be 500 miles. That's a long day pulling a trailer. And then who's
driving all 500 miles?
I am. I'd be stopping, take a nap or something. I don't know what I'm going to do, but that's a long way. I do that when I go to Cleveland, but without pulling a trailer. Driving this trailer is exciting when tractor trailers come by. I remember we were driving on the freeway and there's 3 lanes. I try and stay in the middle because if I don't want to be in the fast lane, but slow lane, people are always trying to get on and they kind of screw you up. So if I stay in the middle, I seem to be okay. And you got to pay attention to your mirrors, because when a tractor trailer comes by, it swooshes your trailer toward it. You can feel your whole thing move. So I'm looking, and all of a sudden I see 2 tractor trailers, one on each side, coming to behind. And I'm thinking, oh, this is not going to be good. This is not good. And Dory is just playing her video game and the dogs are asleep. And I'm going, hang on. And it wasn't too bad. And but then there was another part. There's a lot of construction, so you got narrow lanes. So there's always something. The roads are rough. You boom, 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 boom. And we did that for about 80 miles. And so everything shaking. And I'm thinking, what the heck? But trailer made it. We made it. A couple minor things broke, but nothing major. And we got to get a new shower door. But that was my fault. I didn't lock it. But anyhow, it's
okay.
We're going to spend 2 days in West Virginia with our daughter, Jessa. So we're excited about that. And then we'll be home on the 10th, I believe. And then the 14th, I fly to Cleveland for the Boy Scout event and see family. And come back from that on the 16th. Then on the 21st, we go to Wilmington for the summit, going down on the 20th and coming back on the, I think, 25th. And then take a couple days, rest up, and then start going door to door.
Okay.
Excited.
Listen, sound like you got it all planned out. So just want to continue to pray for you and Dory's safety. Pray God protect Dory and she go and jump out of a perfectly fine airplane. But that's was something wrong with the plane, Bill?
I don't know. That was way beyond me. And they tried talking me into it. And I said, look, I'm going to sit here and have a cigar and a bourbon. They said, you can't drink alcohol on the airport property. I said, okay, then I'll have a bottle of water. There might be some bourbon in it, but I'll have a bottle of water.
Bill, well, listen, really enjoyed today's show. Lincoln and everything associated with that. And it just said politics are politics. Nothing different, nothing new. It is what it is. And hey, listen, it is what it is, correct?
Got to keep it in perspective. You can't let it control your life.
All right, my friend. Tell Dory I said hi and tell her I'm not jumping out of a perfectly good airplane with her. Love her and y'all be good.
Okay, love you, man. Take care.
Same here. Bye-bye.
Find Bill and Odell online at thecommonground.show. This podcast is a production of BG Ad Group. All rights reserved.
Attention men, here's an important new podcast you need to be listening to.
So this whole issue about prostate and prostate health and all the challenges that we're having with it, but no one's talking. So that's the reason why I started this podcast, so we can talk, so we can get understanding. I understand I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical individual. I'm just an ordinary, normal guy who had some issues to say, hey, let's talk about this thing.
P is for Prostate with Odell Cleveland. Download anytime where you get your podcasts. And join for the full podcast at www.patreon.com/Odell Cleveland.
Whether you're a big, medium, or small business, managing and growing the bottom line is important. Focus CFO brings the experience and financial acumen of a Fortune 100 chief financial officer to your company at a fraction of the cost. P&L help, internal reporting processes, or any business transitions or events. Focus CFO will help you and your team have a CFO in your company's back pocket. Focus CFO. Learn more at focuscfo.com.